Welcome to the April 2024 Innovation Illuminated podcast highlights. I'm going to talk about some main takeaways that I had from guests and some interesting topics that they brought up that I wouldn't have learned if I wasn't doing this podcast. So let's get right into it. So we had 4 guests this month. We had John Wolf from the Ryle Company, which is a full-service marketing agency. We had Tony Trahan, which is a mortgage loan officer. We had Gary Reynolds, the founder of GMR Marketing. And we had Alex Duran, who is a 30 under 30 real estate agent serving the Milwaukee County area. Let's start out with something that I found in common with all these people. I found that each person was very dedicated to their work and really honed in on one specific topic. Like Alex said in our podcast, you can listen to it. I think it's episode number 24 with Alex, the realtor. She talked about how each person needs to find what they're good at. You could be good at, in the real estate industry specifically, you could be good at flipping houses. You could be good at just buying a house and renting it out to somebody. You could be specifically good at finding good deals in the horse farm industry. There's so many specific industries within a specific industry, like real estate, like I just said, that you really need to hone in on one specific thing that you can become great at. Because if you're good at all, you're a master of none. I don't know who said that quote. I've heard it before. I'm sure that somebody famous has said it before, but I'll say it here, is that, yeah, if you're good at everything, you're not a master of anything. And all these guests this month really chose something to target specifically, and that's what they got good at. I talked about that also with Tony Trahan in episode number 22, is that he said he was all over the board when he was trying to find his passion or what he wanted to do in work. And he was in the boat and car loaning industry before, so he was always in lending, but now he got into mortgages. And since he's gotten into mortgages, he became an expert on that topic. And that's all he knows. He talks about it all the time and is an expert, knows every single in and out, exactly what mortgage will be the best for you and different options, workarounds, and all that stuff that you wouldn't know if you were jumping all over in other industries, such as if you were in the car, marine, and mortgage industry. You might not be as good in the mortgage industry as the person that's just focused on mortgages. And that's what Tony says, is that he's really honed in on mortgages, and it's really helped him to become the best he can possibly be to serve the customer. Another topic that comes to my mind is that each person was really customer focused. So I'll bring up GMR Marketing, Gary Reynolds, for a second here. Gary was always working for the customer. He was always hustling, and a quote that he said is that he can always hear footsteps behind him. That was his motivation. He would get up every morning. I forget how long he said he ran, maybe like 10 miles or something like that. And he'd get into the office before 7 o'clock in the morning, and he'd work till whenever. He took 9 years straight of no days off, just 9 years straight, every single day in the office. If there was a wedding, he said he'd even be in the office and go to the wedding later in the day. It's crazy. But anyways, he was really focused on the end customer. So with GMR Marketing, they started working with matching bands with brands. So he pitched on Pabst and Miller to bring their product in front of these bands and emerging artists that are performing at local bars and such, that they could have like a Miller banner or run a special in the bar at the time. And so GMR Marketing really brought that to the venue because Gary, being the artist that he was and everybody that he knew in the industry, he was able to contact these emerging bands and their tour manager. I forget what he called it, but it was somebody that manages the band. He was able to contact them and hook up Miller with them so that it could be a win-win scenario where the band has somebody that's sponsoring them, so there's a banner above them and gives them more of a reputation of being a good band. And then the brand is also getting, obviously, sales out of it because everybody's going to see that Miller banner or the specials that they're running at the bar and choose to buy a Miller product. So Gary was really focused on the end customer because he knew what could sell and he wanted to get it in front of that end customer because that's what's going to sell. Alex also brings this up when she talks about finding her passion in her work and eventually in the real estate industry, because she is pretty new to the industry. She's only 4 years into real estate and just received the 30 under 30 agent award from the National Realtors Association. So she's been super successful. She sold 10 million, 11 million, up there numbers per year in total gross, I think it's called gross home sales. So just like the total number of houses that she sold. But she said that she really found a passion in working for the customer, because the customer at the end of the day is the one that is, in most cases, actually probably all cases, paying you. So you need to be in their best interest. You want to serve them the best that you can and not be selfish and be in it just for the money. We talked about with her that the real estate industry, a lot of agents are just in it for the cash grab, the easy maybe sale, and you get $10,000 from the commission. But if you want to be a successful person, you can't be in it just for that quick cash, because that quick cash can come and go. And if there's a passion and you're really working for the customer, that's going to show. And the customer is going to see right through that quick cash grab where you're being shady, maybe, or trying to make a deal look better for you, and maybe even sell the house for less because it's going to be more enticing for you to get money. I don't know. That was probably not a good analogy that I made, but she said that you really got to work for the customer, because if the customer has a passion, or you have a passion in providing for the customer, that's just going to rub off on the customer and be something that would be good for you, because they're going to see that you really care about them and are trying to help them through the process. That's something that she really found rewarding in the real estate industry, is that you can share that passion for starting a new life and working through buying a house, finding the right house, and really laying out the options for people to see what they can afford, and also what areas are good, giving your expertise that might entice them to buy in a specific area that they maybe wouldn't have searched in before. So you're really a facilitator helping them. And that's a term I've really noticed that a lot of successful entrepreneurs become, is that they become a facilitator. They might start out as that person that's just hustling and grinding and doing it for themselves, maybe to, like I said, get the cash. Maybe they want to buy a Porsche someday or a cool house, which is fine motivation. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are like that when they're starting a business, but eventually they just become a facilitator where they step back and they are the expert at doing the work, but they become a facilitator where they're bringing in employees and morphing them into the people that they want to be working at their company. For Gary Reynolds, he said that hiring employees, they would just hire them just because of the person that they were, because he knew that if somebody had a good character and was passionate, they could sell anything. If they were good at talking to people and were somebody that he liked and had a good upbringing, good reputation, easy to talk to, that he could just morph them into being a good employee. And he even said that when they'd hire employees, it was like throwing them in the deep end. They just hire them, wouldn't even train them, just, you're on the job, let's do it. Earlier in the podcast, I think, let me look here, I did a podcast with Mark Smathers. I think it was episode number 4. And he actually worked for GMR Marketing, so that was a fun association to make between an employee and then the founder. So Mark said that when he was hired, he got a call one day from Gary saying, all right, you're ready, you're hired, and you're on the team. Start tomorrow. And Mark was so confused, like, well, what's the training? Like, what's the process? I can't leave my job right now. And Mark also said in their interview that Gary was more interested about finding out the character of the person, not really their skill set. So Mark said that he asked him questions about his upbringing and his family life, which are questions that you probably couldn't ask today in an interview. So maybe this isn't good advice I'm talking about, but Gary said it was super important to him then to know that information, because if they're a good person deep down, that they will become a good employee and be able to serve the greater good of the business. So Mark said that, yeah, he was just hired out of the blue, and Gary was like, all right, come in, let's do it. And Gary was always adapting and shifting. That's another thing that comes in with entrepreneurs, is that they're very versatile and can adapt to things. Mark had one day where he just came into the office and just was down and not excited to be at work. And Gary's like, what's wrong? Mark said, I'm just not excited, man. Like, my passion just isn't there lately. I'm getting bored. I'm doing the same thing every day. And Gary's like, well, let's change something. Let's make a change. What can we do that can make this job better for you? We need to make a change to make you more happy and to also make this company thrive, because if an employee is just stagnant and doing the same thing and not having fun or passion where they're working, they're not going to have the same output as somebody that's enjoying coming into work every day and trying something new and continuing to learn on the job. That's something that really hits home when Gary says that, like, you gotta have people be able to do what they want. You can't just throw them into a role and say, just do this, the same thing, and get to these numbers. Because at a growing company, these small companies that grow into these large companies like GMR, starting with Gary and a few of his friends, and then growing into, I want to say he said it was at like 1,000 employees when he left. It starts with a pack of people that are passionate about the product, the brand, the services that you offer, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be the most passionate about selling the product. But also, they feel like they have their voice heard in the company, so that the entrepreneur can shift and move quickly. Because somebody at this company, like Gary said, at the bottom of the totem pole, such as like an intern or entry-level employee, they could have a voice that could change a process or a service, or could offer something new to your company that you maybe never even thought of. So giving everybody a voice and empowering everybody to become a leader is super important to be as a CEO and entrepreneur. During Tony Trahan's podcast, we really talked about specific applications to loans and stuff. So we weren't talking about really entrepreneurship mindset and success stories. We were talking about a bunch of different options for lending, loans. So I'll talk about a little bit of that, because that's kind of like a business expert that I think is important for everybody to know that they might not know. But also, if you just go to a loan officer like Tony, they could help teach you all this stuff. So I'll just go through some of this quick so that you guys can learn. And if you don't want to learn, maybe skip 5 minutes ahead, because we'll get back into some entrepreneur stories. So some loan options. Tony was saying that a cash out refinance is very interesting for people that are investing. So how it works is that you've got equity in the house. So here's an example. House is worth $200,000. You're going to put $20,000 down, which is 10%. Now you have 10% equity in the house, and then you're loaning the $180,000, or lending the $180,000. So you could do that. You have $20,000 in, $180,000. So the $20,000 is the equity that you have in the house. Say you need to buy something down the road that's $20,000. Like you could do a new car, you could do a boat, or you could do a down payment on another investment property, which is where it gets really interesting. So you can do a cash out refinance. So that $20,000 that you put into that house as equity, which was the down payment originally, you can pull that out, and then you get a new loan for the original amount, $200,000. So the cash is out of the house, and now you have a bigger loan, usually higher percent interest rate, unless rates went down maybe. But now you have 20 grand cash back in your pocket that you put in a down payment, and now you can put that towards something else. So say you want to buy a car with cash, or a boat with cash, or a down payment on another house. And it's also a good way to consolidate stuff. So another example that we bring up is if you have a car loan, if you have a boat loan, if you have a mortgage, you can consolidate them all into one umbrella with the same rate, the same monthly payment, but it's going to be a bigger amount, and it's your house that's the main mortgage. So yeah, you could bring in like your house, your boat, and your car, and that cash out, if you had I'm sure this is probably getting kind of confusing, but let's say you had 100,000 in equity in the house, so 100,000 into the house, 200,000 you still own it, so it's a $300,000 house. You have a car loan that's worth $50K and a boat for $10,000. You can bring that cash out of the equity in the house that you had that 100 grand already in. So bring out $50K cash, pay off the car loan, $10K cash, pay off the boat loan, and then you have one loan that you can pay for everything under, but it's going to be bigger. So you had the 100,000 equity. Now you're down to 40,000 equity because you brought out that 60K, which was that cash out feature. So that's like the main one that we talk about in that episode. And we bring up a bunch of examples and applications like I just gave. I'm probably way more confusing than Tony because he's an expert and talks about this stuff every day with clients. But that's my kind of takeaway and what I learned, because I didn't understand how it worked and how you're able to do that, because a lot of investors like we see on TikTok are doing that stuff. And that's a way to do it, which is the cash out refinance. And another thing that he said, which I asked about, which I see on TikTok all the time, is like people buying houses and assuming the loan that was already there, that like a low interest rate, since maybe you're not able to get a loan because you don't qualify. So he was saying that assumable loans are not common at all. I thought that they were common because on TikTok I see people saying all the time like, oh, just take over the person that owns the house's loan. So basically it would be like, I own a house, I'm selling it, I already have a loan on it because I'm haven't paid it off yet. And the new buyer would just take over that loan so they don't have to go and get approved and stuff. They could just take over that loan, assume the loan, and then start paying on it. So they wouldn't have to go take out a loan, like I said, because a lot of young people maybe won't qualify if they don't have a lot of tax history. Maybe you're self-employed and your taxes don't look so good and you're not approved for that big of a house or that expensive of a house, that maybe an assumable loan will be good for you. But like I said, it's pretty dang uncommon, like Tony said. And when you buy the loan, you have to make sure that you check the assumable loan box. And I believe he said that it was actually a higher interest rate, but I'm not sure. But anyways, he said that it's not very common. Let's see. What else did we talk about that was interesting? A HELOC loan, which I don't think most people would do, but it's basically same thing, the equity in the house, and it's like a credit card that's associated with your mortgage loan. So, but then you pay another percent. So it's basically like taking out another loan, which might help if your furnace went out and you needed the money. So you didn't want to put it on a credit card and you could just put it on the HELOC loan. But I'm trying to think of what else. I think the cash out was like the most interesting thing that we talked about, most applicable for most people. And then there's a million different loan options like fixed rate, construction loans, lot loans, adjustable rate. There was a bunch of different rates that we talked about, which I'm not going to get into because he said there's like 50 rates and we only talked about like 10 on the podcast, but I'm not an expert in that. So go listen to that episode if you want to learn more about that, because Tony is the best and expert in the field of mortgage lending. Let's get into John Wolf. So the Rally Co. This is an awesome podcast. We did it downtown in Milwaukee in the 3rd Ward in their office. He is a full service with his co-owner, a full service marketing agency that they started a few years back. And both of them worked at marketing agencies before starting this. So they really had a all around knowledge in the industry before starting the business. And they work with brand development, running commercials, brand visions, and mission statements. They kind of work really close with the brand to portray the brand's image. So designing their logo. He said they've been working a lot with commercial real estate, such as apartment complexes, with the naming rights to them, because he said you won't believe how many apartments are named the same thing, which was really funny because I never knew that, or never thought about it, that there's probably only so many names you can do. Because if you look up, for example, the Edison, I'm sure there's 100 apartment complexes maybe even in the same state that are named that. So you really want to stand out and be able to have that SEO and that edge that separates you from the competition. And John talked about so much, but I'll just skim the surface with it so you can go listen to that podcast if you'd like. But we walked through the onboarding process, some customer experiences that he's had, and overall kind of his experiences and what he's learned through the first couple of years in the business. And with delegating roles, because he's more on the account side of things, and then his co-owner, which is why they mesh well, his co-owner is on the creative side. So John can be talking to the client and getting what all the info that he needs to deliver on what they'd like to happen. Then his partner is the one that is able to create that vision that John is telling him to then bring it back to the company to show the success story, a successful project that they worked on. With a marketing agency, there's a couple different types of pay structures that they work on. So there's a commission base, which is where it's more so in paid advertising, he said, where the return on investment. So say for a company, you run an ad and the ad brings in $100,000 in revenue, you could work off a 5% commission. So then the company wouldn't pay you anything if you didn't perform. But if the ad does well, now you're getting a commission rate, which is a huge upside. So that can be a huge plus for the commission rate. But if you don't perform well, you're getting nothing because there's no sales. So a commission rate is one thing. Retainer based is where they kind of are on a retainer where they have the money and just are called when they need to work. The most common that they work on is just a project based, where they just are flat rate, he said. Project based, same thing, where they just get paid per project. So to design a logo, a couple $1,000 or whatever it is. I'm not sure. We didn't get into prices, but it's just a flat rate based on the work they're doing. I really like his business because it's something new every day. He's working with different brands, running different commercials. And back to that facilitator thing, in owning an agency, you really have to be a facilitator, because a customer comes to you and says, hey, I want to do a commercial. Here's what we want to do. You be the facilitator and take it from here. So the company might say, like, here's our logo, here's our text, here's our colors. We want a commercial that portrays this and has this vision or end goal. And now John has to write the script. He might outsource the copywriting and develop a whole storyboard for the commercial. And now John has relationships with people, the filmers, and brings them on, creates a set, creates the storyboard frame by frame, pitches it to the customer or the company, and then they film it, edit it, and it's a lot. Some of this is outsourced, like the filming and editing. But John, as the marketing agency owner, is being the facilitator for the whole process for this company. So he's the touch point, making sure everything's happening. Because a lot of times a lot of companies just don't have time to hire somebody to do this in-house. So that's why they hire an agency like the Rally Co., where they can be experts in that field and to just take it hands-free from the company and just work with it. That was what I found super interesting about the Rally Co. and a marketing agency, is that they have so much diverse things that they can do. They can do the brand development, they can do logo work, naming rights, and a bunch of different things, package design. There's so many things that you can get into in the marketing agency, and they kind of focus on that all around full service agency. And if they can't do it, they will still do it, but they'll outsource it, like the filming, the editing. So that's important with an online business like that, is that look at outsourcing some stuff. Don't just turn down a customer and say you can't do it. Maybe if you outsource it and it turns out good, they might come to you for something that you can do and that you can do in-house next for their next project. I think that pretty much sums up the month of April 2024. I'm looking forward to keeping the podcast going, and my businesses are going to start getting busy here, so it's going to be tough, but I hope to keep the podcast going because I learned so much from these people and get to talk to some super cool people. But right now I feel like I'm at a sticking point where I'm getting so much info thrown at me by these very successful people that it's hard to absorb it all. So I hope that you guys are taking this in and gaining some knowledge from this, because sometimes I feel that I'm overwhelmed by all the info that they give me since they're so successful, and what worked for somebody might not work for somebody else. So really listen to everybody's perspective and learn from them. Hope you get a takeaway. And thanks for tuning in to Innovation Illuminated, because I love providing for you guys, since, like I said, I might be overwhelmed with all the info, but I hope you guys are taking it in. And maybe a realtor learned a lot from Alex, or somebody that's starting a marketing agency learned a lot from John. So I hope I can find that industry that you're looking to get into and something that might inspire you. So please leave a comment on YouTube with who you'd like me to interview and what you're curious to learn from them, so that I can help you learn. It might not help me learn, but I want to help the end person, the viewer, learn. So please leave a comment on YouTube. I will be reading all of them. And I hope you enjoyed this past month and my little recap episode. I'm sure it was all over the place because I have no script and I was just coming up with all that off the top of my head. And some of these were a few weeks ago that I filmed these, so my memory might not be so good. So hopefully I summed it up good. But go listen to those episodes. They were awesome this past month. So I hope you enjoyed this one. And thanks for tuning in to Innovation Illuminated.